Hi, everyone, and welcome to the special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and the Len Sciuto Show with our host, Len Sciuto, best-selling author, Hades Crypt, and multiple other books. Len, thanks for stopping by. How are you?
I'm okay. Good morning to you, Neil, and good morning to our listeners. I hope everything is well with everybody. We need to cover a couple of things before we get into the actual subject matter. First of all, the views and analysis discussed in this podcast are based on publicly available reports, geopolitical commentary, and opinion. Certain claims remain disputed or unverified. This program is intended for discussion and informational purposes only and does not assert definitive conclusions regarding ongoing international matters. So that covers the aspects of this. Let's talk a little bit about the books to begin with. Hades Crypt, as of today, has been on the bestseller list now for 40 weeks. To me, that is amazing. I can't imagine. It's unfathomable how I feel about this. I'm glad people are going and buying the book, and I'm sincerely hope that they enjoy it. Following along those lines, I finished Desperate Countermeasures early in the week, and the publisher has started putting the package together to bring it out to the marketplace, and hopefully that'll be out by the first week of October. That book, I'll just give you a little bit of information. The authors that were brought together to write the National Nuclear Contingency Plan are being tortured, kidnapped, and then eventually murdered after they give up their information to an in-house terrorist group in the United States. The reason they're being neutralized is to neutralize that plan, which addresses a new satellite system called the Archangel satellite system, which is a protection satellite system for not only the United States, but the interests throughout the globe. I will say that a regular current event, if you remember in the past, there were 11 scientists that were being kidnapped, and then they were either showing up or some of them were even murdered. It's ironic that as I wrote this story, that was somewhat of a correlation, and I couldn't believe it. I was already writing the story before these people started disappearing. So that's that book. Tango Down China Sea was the first book I wrote, and that's between the United States and Russia, the United States and China in the China Sea. Devil's Delegation is a terrorism book, and this new book coming out in October is a sequel to that book. So it is also a terrorism, counterterrorism book. And then Hades Crypt was based upon a nuke submarine I was on, and she went under the ice. And that's the story between Russia and the United States in and under the Arctic Circle. So that's the books to address. I'm also considering at the same time I'm writing this new fifth book, writing a book about my grandchildren. They asked me to do that. So I'm probably going to write these two at the same time. Book number 5 is called Arctic Defiance. And what that is about is there are large amounts, I'll put it that way, of natural resources in and under the Arctic Circle. They estimate that there are somewhere around 90 trillion barrels of crude oil. There's 1,715 trillion cubic meters of natural gas, and the precious and rare earth metals are measurable. Now you have to remember there are 8 countries inside the Arctic Circle, and so 7 of those are NATO, and the only country that is not is Russia. That's the country that has the most geographical turf inside the Arctic Circle. So that's an important aspect for this new story too. The other part that's important is in 2025, when the administration changed in the White House, Russia had 3 military bases inside the Arctic Circle. The United States has none. As I talk to you today, Russia has 42 bases inside the Arctic Circle. The United States has 10. Russia, because of the Arctic Circle and the weather that's encountered up there, has 9 icebreakers that if they cannot get in by air, they can break the ice and come in by ship. The United States only has 2 icebreakers, and both of those belong to the United States Coast Guard. So I don't think we'll ever catch up on the total number of bases, but it'll be interesting to see whether or not Russia attempts in some way, shape, or form to try to get as much of those natural resources that I just identified to you. The cost of a barrel of oil today, as of this morning, is $81.89. It's gone up a little bit, but not much. And the other thing I'll mention is Iran has been claiming, as you know, that they're in control of the Straits of Hormuz. That is not the case. And it's substantiated that in the last 24 hours, the United States Navy has escorted out of the Straits of Hormuz 18 ships. So Iran does not have control of the Straits of Hormuz. So the other thing I'll mention before I talk about actually being inside Iran, as I mentioned earlier, Neil, there are 18 U.S. military bases inside the Middle East. I found out yesterday 13 of those bases are nearly uninhabitable due to Iran missile strikes since the war began. And CENTCOM, which is the biggest base we have in the Middle East, has been dispersing troops and moving men and equipment around. So the 18 that were fully up and operational are not fully up and operational. There's only 5 that are, and the other 13 are attempting to be beefed up. That's a big surprise to me because we need all of those bases due to the circumstances and the sequence of events that have been happening since the 1st of May. Iran's Supreme Leader Khomeini has now appointed, as we know in the news, 6 senior commanders across the general staff, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, that's the IRGC, and the Bashi's Domestic Security Police Force. The Domestic Security Police Force oversees, you ready for this? Public behavior, dress codes, and public gatherings. So what they're saying is, as we've seen in the past, with 54,000 plus people missing from the country of Iran due to being eliminated, they have a group of police that's kind of like the German SS, if you remember, from World War II, and the situation that caused a lot of people in Germany to disappear. I will say most analysts say that this is aimed at equipment the country's wartime security establishment with battle-hardened figures with extensive experience. So all 6 of these people have been involved in combat and military operations. That tells me that they have no intention of doing what the United States is requesting they do. I do not believe at this point in time, unless things significantly change, that there'll never be a ceasefire. That's a bad thing when you're thinking about the midterm elections coming up in November. It could substantially hurt the Republican Party. And I'm not talking about politics here. I'm just saying that that's the possible situation. Rear Admiral Ali Omenzi was named commander of the IRGC Navy, and Hossein Taib was appointed the head of the in-house police that I just mentioned. They directly report to the Supreme Leader, and you know that is Khomeini. Rezai, I have difficulty pronouncing all these names, was named commander of the IRGC. Oh, I already mentioned that. Rezai was named secretary of the Supreme National Security Council and Khomeini's representative in the top decision-making body, which plays a crucial role in the country's security and foreign policy. Now, we've seen 2 groups of people. We've seen the people that are willing to cooperate with the United States and the IRGC that are not willing to cooperate with the United States. So what's happening here, as you can see, that they're taking these people that are hardline military people and putting them in significant positions across the board. The appointments of these 6 are pretty much about consolidating, I'll say, Khomeini's authority as correcting the vulnerability aspects that have been exposed over the 2 wars that they've been involved in. The current military status of the Straits of Hormuz, it remains closed to commercial shipping, with the United States still maintaining a naval presence and blockade posture throughout the Straits. Now, we heard recently also that there have been issues with crew on the Abraham Lincoln. That's a nuclear aircraft carrier that belongs to the United States. Those 4 guys have been deployed for over a year, and things are becoming very difficult for them. They're very unhappy that they have to be there, and that carrier is going to be moved out of the Middle East, and they're bringing in another carrier in from the United States. Just to let you know, at one point in time, in and out, I spent more than 7 months at sea in submarines when I was in subs. The Iranian military and foreign ministry officials have declared that Tehran's control over the strait is irreversible, which could affect the midterm elections, like I previously mentioned. So the U.S. must accept the new status quo or face even greater costs. Iran has been enforcing its blockade by restricting passage to vessels from the U.S., but Israel and their allies have used naval forces, mines, and attacks to try to prevent those on merchant ships to deter transit. Iran is also in talks with Oman for a temporary shipping route, but insists that reopening the straits will require U.S. military withdrawal, troop withdrawal, and financial compensation. The President of the United States has refused this declaration. Obviously, you know why. The Straits of Hormuz is an international waterway, and there was a publication or a piece of news that said Iran was controlling ships coming into the strait, and Oman was going to control ships going out of the Straits of Hormuz. I believe that tolling is still on the table on the part of these 2 countries. Let me see. Let me think about this a minute. Iran has been enforcing its blockade by restricting passage to the vessels, as we know. They're also trying to work a deal that the president has denied. U.S. Navy maintains 100% control over the straits, claiming it has cleared the waterway of mines and operates, quote unquote, the steel wall blockade. And that's what we've heard advertised by not only the White House, but the media. The U.S. military forces, including Marines and amphibious assault ships, are positioned nearby for crisis response, maritime security, and potential operations. The United States has also fired on vessels attempting to run the blockade, and that happened in the last 2 days, if you have been following the news. They hit one ship, totally making it immobile by going after the engine room. There is only, as you look at it today, even with those 18 ships that were passed through in the last 24 hours, about 3 to 5% of normal vessel traffic, with most transits being limited as sanctioned or diplomatic vessels. Security in that area is under active U.S. and Iranian military operations from both sides, constructing maritime strength, attacks, and detention and deferral. So things aren't going to change. And with these new 6 people in the positions they are, I have to tell you that I think this is going to end up as a long-term conflict. It could get worse if the Iranians develop nuclear weapons and use them. Then the crap is really going to hit the wall. The U.S. maintains a naval blockade of the Iranian ports, and Iran has cited that as a breach of the April ceasefire and the agreement, and a reason to keep the straits closed. In other words, the MOU is gone. All of the agreements that they made are gone. What's happening today is it's a head-to-head confrontation for vessel traffic being allowed to run through the Straits of Hormuz. This thing now has been called an economic war or a confrontation, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. For the military status, Iran asserts full control and closure, while the United States claims operational dominance and readiness to enforce its blockade. And that's exactly what we're seeing. The situation remains tense, to say the least, with no permanent satisfaction of reopening the Straits of Hormuz to vessel traffic is in sight. It remains an active focal point of the broader U.S. versus Iran conflict. And of course, what has happened is we originally initiated that conflict because of the nuclear weapons production that they had been advertising. And it suddenly changed to the Straits of Hormuz because we hurt Iran significantly by taking out their Navy and Air Force and hitting key facilities. And I'll talk about Pickaxe Mountain in a few minutes. As we know, the economy is largely dependent on oil and gas exports, which account for a major share of the government's revenue. Well, if it ain't moving in and out, they don't have any revenue. However, U.S. sanctions have severely impacted Iran's ability to trade internationally, limiting financial investment and access to the global financial markets. They still want the money. They want reparations for the quote unquote the damage that the United States has done, and the United States is claiming the same. Again, no solution, no cooperation. The country has sought to circumvent these restrictions through barter trade, reliance on regional allies, and strengthening ties with China and Russia. And I'll mention one thing that I found out yesterday that is very upsetting to me. Iran now has an intercontinental ballistic missile with a range of 6,214 miles. From the east coast of Iran, I would say from the center of Iran, to the east coast of California is 7,100 miles. So they're still looking at 900 miles. Now, the interesting thing about this intercontinental ballistic missile is it didn't come from China. It was given to them through the North Koreans. And once the missile appeared in Iran, it was identified as being a Russian-made intercontinental ballistic missile. So we now not only have China supporting Iran, but that's a significant indication that Russia is also supporting Iran. Let me see, what other thing? The U.S. Navy maintains, obviously, 100% control over the straits, claiming that it has cleared the waterway of mines and operates that steel wall. The forces that are in place around there, I'm saying if it happens, those guys are going to be on the ground right away. And I do not think that's going to happen right away, Neil. I think they're going to maintain the air war rather than putting boots on the ground, unless there's no solution to Pickaxe Mountain.
Yeah,
While Iran
and that's interesting what you're saying. And I know you have a lot more to talk about. This is very intriguing. Is I'm seeing in the news that we have a deal. Why do we always hear we have a deal?
I think what it is, again, these people are willing to agree, and their position, if you go back historically, is they say one thing and do the exact opposite, and we've seen that all along. So what I think what happens is with the negotiations going on, they agree to some things, and the news that we're hearing in through the media is we're working on a deal, we're close to a deal, yada, yada, yada. But the actual aspect is there ain't no deal. So I have no idea what's going to happen in the future, but these people don't realize they're maintaining the posture that they think they're in control. They think they cannot be eliminated. They know they're not going to have an uprising from their people. They know they have the support of the other three snakes, the other three heads of the snake. That's North Korea, Russia, and China. I don't know what else to say. Iran is demanding financial compensation for the war before it reopens the Straits of Hormuz. That I should say before they agree to reopen the Straits of Hormuz. But last-minute concessions dampens the hopes of an imminent deal. That's what I was talking about. They want reparations. They gave President Trump these 6 points. You're going to do this, 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 and this. And President Trump said, go spit in the wind, so to speak. Speculation has been building for days that an agreement was emerging that would restore safe passage in the Straits following the direct negotiations between Oman and the Islamic Republic. That's not happening either. Tolling will not be approved. That's another thing that keeps popping up, as the waterway is international waters, and that's documented, I guess is the best way to say that. But Aragachi, who is the guy that's IRGC, that's threatening the United States all the time, he's the foreign Iranian minister, said reopening the straits would depend on other conditions. It would include compensation in the form of reparations to Iran for the war. That compensation would have to be paid by the U.S. before Iran reopens the critical waterway. President Trump countered Iran's reparation request with a U.S. one for past attacks on the American people and places not only in the Middle East, but around the globe. Other demands are included, such as stopping U.S. aggression against Iran's proxy groups in Lebanon and Palestine and Yemen. And we know for a fact that one country was counseled and requested by Iran when they sent a cadre of people to persuade them as a proxy terrorist group to enter the war. And they did. Those are the Houthis. It is interesting to note that the U.S. is not known to be engaged in any action against Hamas, Hezbollah, or the Houthis, although it could refer to a demand that the U.S. lean on its regional partners to cease hostility from these terrorist groups. The other interesting thing, Neil, that I mentioned, when I wrote Devil's Delegation, there were two countries involved in that story when I was doing the research for the book. And in those two countries, there were 29 terrorist groups. Several we knew about, but the others were so small, and they were pocketed, for lack of a better description. But the point is, when we talk about the primary ones like Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, there's got to be more in these other countries as well. It's like how do I put this? It's like a dog that's walking through a field and it's flea infested. They just keep popping up. So anyway, that's that part of it. The extra demands suggest growing Iranian confidence that it can squeeze more concessions out of Donald Trump. You have to remember that he said that he did not want to put boots on the ground because he doesn't want to kill people. That's an indication that he's demonstrated and advertised in the past. He's a humanitarian and he's a Christian. And I think he became a better Christian after these two groups tried to take his life. But the point is, my personal opinion is, if we can't bring this thing to closure, there's no other alternative but putting boots on the ground. And I hate to say that, and I'm not in charge. I'm not on the Joint Chiefs. I'm not at the Pentagon. I'm not writing and using contingency plans anymore like I used to. I'm just a retired guy that's been out for 21 years. U.S. officials mentioned that President Trump believes that once the strait is open, America can surveil any future nuclear activity from afar and act if needed. I do not believe that. And the reason I do not believe that is the IAEA, which was the NATO group that was supposedly overseeing the nuclear aspects of that country, Iran, I will say, that's the country. They were denied access to some of these facilities. They were told, you are not going into Pickaxe Mountain and you're not going into Nadance, see what's going on. They refused to let them in. So why does our administration believe right now that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, even in cooperation with the IAEA, is going to be able to go into that country and investigate nuclear enrichment or nuclear power, electrical power, and not for weapons? It's not going to happen. It's the only way that, as like I mentioned, is a cooperative group of the IAEA and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in that theater 24/7. And I'll talk about Pickaxe. You people, you're not going to believe what I know or what's being demonstrated and under observation. The IAEA, as I just mentioned, has never been allowed to observe the Iranian status of their nuclear program, and it will never allow Iran, the U.S. investigation of the same. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. The IAEA ain't going to see it, and the United States NRC isn't going to see it either. And the only way you can monitor that is by satellite or drone or aircraft, photo recon aircraft. The other aspect of this is, even if you see it, how do you prevent it? There's no way to prevent it unless you're in the country. The biggest nuclear issue today, in my opinion, is Pickaxe Mountain. And that mountain is an under construction underground nuclear facility located on the south side of Iran's Natanz nuclear enrichment site, which is just about a mile away from that mountain. Now, in the past, in 2025, Israel took out Nadance. That's the centrifuge facility. So what was happening, those three nuclear enrichment facilities in the country were transporting the uranium-235 to Nadance and some of the other centrifuge plants, and they were enriching it, attempting to enrich it to bring it up to nuclear grade. Now, you have to remember that I said that if the uranium-235 is used for nuclear power, it only gets enriched to 4%. You take that same material and take it to 60 to 90%, you've got access to a nuclear weapon. And so what I saw on a video last week, I think, Neil, that I mentioned it, vehicles were coming out of Pickaxe Mountain empty, and then they were going to what's left of the Nadance facility, the centrifuge facility, and then they were going back into the mountain loaded. I think, I cannot substantiate it, there's been no documentation, it's not been aired in the media, but I think there's nuclear material in Pickaxe, and they're bringing the centrifuges in to create it to nuclear grade for weapons. It takes 10 to 14 days to create nuclear material for a nuclear weapon. And I have advertised, and we talked about it, Neil, that I thought it was going to happen during the ceasefire. I thought it was going to happen during the MOU. And now we've got a mountain that's pretty much impregnable. And I'll talk about that in a minute. This mountain is protected by anti-aircraft batteries, specific military ground troop fencing, and Iran's Revolutionary Guard. The estimated excavation depths of this facility in Pickaxe is between 260 to 328 feet, with ongoing digging, possibly making it even deeper. So supposedly the bunker buster bombs that we have cannot reach it. Now, the mountain itself is 5,300 feet high, so that's over a mile. And this facility at ground level is down let's say between 300 and 350 feet. There's no way we can take that mountain. I believe there is a way we can slow it down and prevent it, and I'll talk about that in a minute. In July 2026, President Trump publicly threatened to bomb Pickaxe Mountain, calling it a key underground site, saying that the United States would, quote unquote, hit that area very probably pretty soon. Not happened yet. Iran's military command warned that such an attack would be an explosion of war in the region. And the explosion of war in the region, as I mentioned earlier, we've got those military bases, 13 of them, that are pretty much uninhabitable right now due to the previous missile attacks. So we don't have those bases up and running. There's no way we can monitor what's going on in those areas where those bases are located. The threats come amid U.S. military operations targeting Iranian facilities and disputes over control for the Straits, with leaving the Strait future management unresolved. The United Nations Nuclear Group, the IAEA, once again, has never gained access to this site, so its exact current contents of operational status remain unknown and classified. The only group that knows what's going on at Pickaxe Mountain is Iran. Nobody else knows, except for the videos that we're seeing from satellite pictures. So my comment is, if the nuclear material is there and they're moving centrifuges in there, we've got to hit that mountain. Now, there's several ways to do it. What I would do is I'd take an aircraft that the A-10 Warthog, that's a tank killer, but it comes in at low ranges, and there are more than one tunnel entrances to this mountain. We would have to cause an avalanche of parts of that mountain covering those tunnel openings. But the other thing that makes it difficult is the fact that Iran has put a enriched, I call military enriched concrete barrier around the entrance, the key entrance to Pickaxe Mountain, but also they've reinforced the tunnel support, I'll call them support beams, but the concrete, it's reinforced enriched concrete, making it somewhat combat preventive, preventive, I guess I should say. Experts believe that it could house centrifuge enrichment plant, potentially be used for nuclear weaponization activities. Multiple entrances are visible from satellite imagery due to the repeated attacks on the Nance. The site here and the information is what I call in World War II the General MacArthur approach here. We hit the ventilation vents, we hit the tunnel openings, sealing everything in, and including the centrifuges, the nuclear material, and the people that are in there. And what MacArthur did in World War II when he was taking back the Philippines, there were islands that were loaded with Japanese soldiers, and he bypassed those islands that had the large groups of those soldiers. And so he bypassed them, but he also cut them off. By cutting them off, I mean there were no ships bringing supplies in, there were no aircrafts coming in, and those people starved to death, died from disease. There was no combat conducted on those islands. And when they looked at the final numbers of those islands that he bypassed, 256,000 Japanese soldiers died. So if we do the same philosophy on Pickaxe Mountain, it eliminates the immediate problem of a nuclear weapon, if that's in fact what's going on inside Pickaxe Mountain. And because the IAEA can't get in, and they're reinforcing that facility, that mountain, I believe that's what's going on. In summary, I guess, Pickaxe Mountain is an active, heavily fortified underground nuclear project in Iran, likely capable of uranium enrichment and possibly weaponization. It has been under construction since 2025 after Natanz was taken out. And recent U.S. threats have heightened regional tensions, though its exact current use remains unknown to the international community. Now, the other thing I'll mention, and this will be my closing comments, Neil. Even if we are successful in isolating Pickaxe Mountain, this country is still going to find a way to try to create a nuclear weapon. Now, we know that China has a hypersonic missile, and if they launch it from the east coast of the United States and hit the west coast of California, and because it is a ballistic intercontinental missile, and it's hypersonic, from launch to detonation from China to California is between 28 to 30 minutes. Now, that doesn't take a lot of time to defense against a weapon like that. But the other aspect of this, too, is now that China has a North Korean missile, which is a Russian missile, it points out the fact that they can go over 6,000 miles in any direction. So you think about the other military bases that are in what I call free world countries, democratic countries. It can hit Greenland. It can hit any of the NATO countries inside the Arctic Circle. And that's the other closing comment I'll make too. The natural resources up there, as I identified this morning, and I'm writing about, is immeasurable. That's money in your pocket, but it's also a means of preventing other countries having those resources. They estimate that there's between 30 to 40% of what's now currently available under the ground inside the Arctic Circle. So Russia putting 42 bases up there and the United States putting 10, I don't know. To me, it's kind of like they're preparing to maintain the entire Arctic Circle. And if that attempt comes to fruition, then we're looking at a bigger conflict. And I hate to say that. The other aspect is if Pickaxe Mountain does create 2 nuclear weapons, where are they going to use it? Use them, I should say. I believe that it's not going to come to the United States because they can't hit it yet. I think they'll hit CENTCOM, and I think they'll hit Israel. And if that happens, then that's going to create a larger conflict than what we're looking at right now. So we have no choice, in my opinion. We have to eliminate Pickaxe Mountain. That's it. That's the bottom line. However the government figures out how to do it and how they carry it out militarily, that will never be known to us until it happens. But the sad state of affairs is we can hurt other aspects. And by the way, I'll mention that the inflation rate right now in that country is 88%. The population doesn't have money for food, paying bills, or anything else. And $1 American dollar, this is mind-blowing, $1 American dollar is equal to 138,000 reals in Iran right now. 138,000. Now, if that was happening here, how many people, how many families, how many companies can afford to spend 138,000, which is equivalent of a $1 bill in America? It's mind-blowing. I don't know if the economic aspects are going to work. I can say that looking at the overall picture, I think we should have taken out Carg Island a long time ago. We should have taken out the oil facilities, storage facilities a long time ago. And now we've got them. They have us in a place where they can produce a nuclear weapon that's pretty much impossible to eliminate. And that's what it is for today, Neil.
Hey, it didn't take you as long as you thought, but it definitely went over our normal 30-minute. But that really leads to some conversation. I mean, because I did block it off. I'm going to give you a little more time today. Looking at this now, every time, and then you just get on the air again, we think we have a deal. And now, again, we don't have a deal.
Right.
I've heard that Iran says till Trump is out of office, we're going to keep this war going. That's one of the things that is going to create even more chaos to get him out of the office. by
Well, the
trying to
other thing,
impeach him. Yeah, go.
the other thing I think that's important is they are not stupid. They realize that if they can drag this out to the midterm elections and the Democrats take over, they're going to be able to do anything they want to do, because we've seen the historical posture of the Democratic Party going all the way back to Obama. And the only way that we can keep the pressure on are the midterm elections have got to go down the Republican road. And if this thing carries out into November, which at this point in time is probably the way it's going to go, who knows? I don't know. The American voters are not stupid. They have to realize, based upon the media and what the media is airing and advertising, they have to realize that what's happening right now is to prevent Americans not losing their lives, Americans not losing their liberties, their freedoms, not just here, even if they attack the United States, but think about all the other places where we have American populations. I mean, in all the free world, there are American populations. The other thing that is mind-boggling is the economical aspect. Sooner or later, those people, you would think, inside Iran would protest and go up against the IRGC. But I don't think it's not in their wherewithal, I'll put it that way. You have to remember, for the last 42 years or 49 years, whatever it is, since 1979, so that's 47 years, they've been beaten, they've been told what to do, they've been told what to say, and if you don't do what's told by the IRGC, you disappear. You get killed. There's 52,000 plus that are no longer living in the country of Iran. And so they realize that as long as these people are in power, they're powerless. And if they try to rise up against them, they realize that they're going to be killed. Now, I mentioned earlier, Neil, that the total population in Iran is about 90 million people. 9 million of those are IRGC people. So even if this regime falls, they're going to meld into the population, and 10 or 15 years down the road, it could happen again. We can't prevent it. I don't know what the answer is for that, Neil.
I mean, I just think this looks like it's an unwinnable war. We're at this point.
Well, we can get them to, if we can take out Pickaxe Mountain and hurt them economically, they can fall out of control. But sooner or later, they're going to be back in. That's just the way it is. That's the way these terrorist groups work. You know, it's violence. Think about the drug cartel and the way the business as well. Think about the shootings and what's going on in our country right now. Think about the facilities that are being targeted, the universities, the synagogues, the churches, important people, people that lead religion that is counter to Islam.
Right.
And it's sickening what's happened to our country because of the fact that for 4 years, anybody and everybody came into our country without determining whether they were good guys or bad guys. And,
right.
You know,
so you're at a different part in society right now to see what's happening, and this is where the big test comes. It comes in the midterms, and that's it. And somehow, if we can win, we only have a few more, not weeks, but months to really get this going and end this war and change this economy, or it's too late.
That's right. It's less than 100 days away. And the other aspect of this is the longer it drags out, and you know that the media, most of the media, is very negative against this conflict. And the only two news stations that I no longer watch, NBC, CBS, or ABC, CNN, or some of the others, because they're very much distorted to the left. I try to stay objectively neutral, but I found that Newsmax and Fox News are pretty much objective. They present the facts, but they also present their opinion based upon the facts, and they try to be objective, and that's the key. The media in the past presented facts, and they were objective. Many of these media today do not present facts. They present opinions, and they are not objective. They're distorted. And the American people, some of them, take it as true value. And if it's what's happening on with the kids today, this transgender stuff and all the other things that are going on, what's happened to our country? How do they, the socialist aspect, how are they, these people that are Americans that enjoy their freedoms, how do they not realize that it's a bunch of crap? Socialism leads to communism, leads to the elimination of religion first, and then you go to a religious country, a non-religious country, a socialist country or a communist country. You walk in a grocery store, there's nothing there. You got to stand in line. I'll tell you this story. I was at the Pentagon, and we were in a seminar, and in the back of the room, somebody yelled, "Attend hut," and everybody stood up. And down the aisle walked a Russian pilot, fighter pilot, and he stood in front of the group. He identified himself, and he said, "I defected from Russia because I had heard that life was better here, and I wanted to find out if it was or not." And he said, "I have to tell you what happened." He said, "Your government put me in a car, and they took me to a grocery store. And I was amazed at what I saw. I saw loaves of bread everywhere. I saw canned goods. I saw meat. I saw vegetables. I saw everything. There was not an empty shell in that place." And I said to the people that were escorting me, I said, "Oh, it's all a ruse. You guys just set this place up." He said, "They took me to 4 other grocery stores. And in the 5th store, I fell to my knees. And I cried. I cried because the country that I came from is ruining the population, is preventing the people to have what they need, to have what they deserve. And I wish they could all see what I saw here."
Right.
How's that for a presentation?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So where can we get your books? I will help you on the web. I'm going to help them on the website. You're going to help them about contacting your personal. Go to jlensciuto.com. You can purchase the books there. You can get them at Amazon, any of the places, and you're going to tell us why.
Yep.
And then basically you have 2 emails people can contact you. Tell us them.
There's a website, janelensciuto@gmail.com. My personal is mobypequod@hotmail.com. Moby Pequod is from the Herman Melville book, Moby Dick. Moby obviously was the whale. Pequod was the name of the whaling vessel in that book. If you send me a request or a conversation piece, I will be more than happy to answer and talk with you about it. The other thing I will also mention is a former military officer who's now a Catholic priest recently contacted me. He's out of Philadelphia. He also does a podcast, Neil, but it's called The Doo-Wop Show. And what he does is he takes your military career and what you've done as a civilian for guys that have retired from the military, and he puts music to your generation, and you send him bullets about things, and he puts the music in between, and he questions you about things, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Father Miles Barrett, who's a personal friend of ours, he's in Cape May, New Jersey. He suggested that I talk to him. The general's name is Father Jim Drucker, and there are people that he has worked with. He was a record company. He wrote songs. He knew people like the Rondells, Bobby Darin, Bobby Rydell. It's unbelievable the musical stars and people that we knew growing up. He works with them, and he worked with all of them. I had the privilege of talking to a 2-star general that not only received the Bronze Star for Vietnam, but he was recently awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. And he talked about what his view of what's going on today, and it pretty much mirrors what you and I have been talking about since the conflict began on the 1st of May. But he has a little bit different perspective. He says that without a doubt, if we want to eliminate what's going on, we have no choice. We got to put boots on the ground.
All right. Okay. All right. Go to jlensciuto.com. That was a special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and the Len Sciuto Show, guys. Take care.